Every great battle begins before the first shot is fired, and D-Day was no exception. Many films center on the dramatic invasion itself, but what did it take to get to that moment? Director Anthony Maras was more interested in the decisions leading up to the action for his film, Pressure.
There's been many films that have covered that. What interested me about Pressure is that it was the inverse of that. It kind of focused its narrative on this 3 days leading up to the largest seaborne invasion in history. You ultimately had this small group of characters who had a decision to make. Do we go or don't we go? These really brilliant men and women drive themselves nuts trying to answer that question.
If D-Day is cancelled, we will lose this war.
The final decision on the timing of D-Day will be mine, and mine alone.
If you invade tomorrow, they're going to be washed away.
June 1944. 3 days before the largest seaborne invasion in history, and the fate of the free world comes down to one question. What will the weather do?
That's compounded by the fact that their technology was far more primitive. They had no night vision. They've got to land in enemy territory at night. So they also need the moon to be in particular brightness.
One man walked into that map room with an answer nobody wanted to hear.
What I found so compelling about Stagg's character is in him you've got a guy who goes and stares down the most formidable military minds of that era. And he looked them in the eye and didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, but what they needed to hear.
Why should I trust you?
For Eisenhower, the question wasn't just about the weather. It was about trust and who to listen to when everything is on the line.
And that dynamic between these titanic personalities clashing against one another and the wisdom of the leader to find the right people and to find who to trust is far more important in the complex world that we live in. When JFK asked Eisenhower, what gave us the edge on D-Day? And Eisenhower just said, well, we had better meteorologists than the Germans.
In this episode of Army Matters, our host, Lieutenant General retired Leslie Smith, sits down with film director Anthony Maras, a storyteller drawn to the decisions made in quiet rooms that changed the course of history. They discuss his film, Pressure, the weight of command, and the lesson that knowing who to trust matters as much as knowing what to do. Pressure is currently in theaters nationwide. I'm Carrie Varuhaikis, and this is Army Matters.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to your next episode of Army Matters. I'm Lieutenant General retired Leslie C. Smith, the 66th Inspector General, and your Vice President for Leadership and Education here at the mighty Association of the United States Army. I'm here with my good friend, my good buddy,
Dan Daly, and I was once upon a time the 15th Sergeant Major of the Army some years ago, and I'm currently the Vice President for NCO and Soldier Programs and the co-host with Les Smith here at Army Matters. Les, how are you today?
Great. Once upon a time, like it was a fairy tale. Like a fairy tale? Dan Daly, a fairy tale of being the Sergeant Major of the Army?
Our editors told us we got to mix it up a little bit.
Mix it up a little bit?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mix it up.
Yeah. You know, Dan, you got a little facial hair going on today, man. What's going on?
You know, a little out of the office growth, that's all. Mm-hmm. You know, just not, just feeling it.
All right. We're going to send a picture to General Brown,
No, don't send it to the boss. Don't send it to the boss.
Yeah, he'll counsel us accordingly.
He will.
So, Dan.
Yes, sir.
I got some questions for you.
Okay.
All right. So, this thing about pressure.
Like tire pressure?
No.
I
guess you could say that, but this is a different type of pressure. Pressure could come from a lot of places. give me 2 times when you had to lead under pressure.
Oh, 2. Okay.
2. Once as a sergeant major and then once as a SMA.
Yeah. Okay. As a sergeant major, I had to lead one of the combat convoys into Iraq during the invasion.
Okay.
And I
like
remember
OAF
like OAF 1.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were
you a battalion sergeant major then?
I was. And we were supposed to attack from the north through Turkey, and
yes, I remember.
They denied us, right? So
yes.
So 3rd ID went from the south, from Kuwait, and then so we had to turn everything around, and then we were way behind. And I remember getting everything off the boat frantically. And then the op order was basically on the top of the battalion commander's Humvee, and he gave me a grid. He said, I need you here tomorrow. And it was like pointing towards south of Baghdad, and I was in Kuwait.
Oh, wow.
And I said, sir, I'm missing like 5 of the map sheets. He said, here's your mission. Get here tomorrow.
And for our listeners, just so you know, we didn't have all the position, navigation, and timing stuff that we have today.
No. But, I had no reference in map sheets, right? So I was using Dead Reckoning, everything I could. I was looking at the stars. I was looking at the moon. I was, because I'm leading this convoy. But we made it. I was so relieved when I got there. Yeah. So relieved. But
what about time as a sergeant major?
Oh, so many times. Probably when I wore the new Army service green uniform without telling the Secretary of Defense that I was going to wear it, and I wore it
that
in 2017 on the Army-Navy game, and just walked out on the field. There wasn't a lot of pressure when I was walking out. This seemed like a really good idea when I started,
but not so good after.
Not so good afterwards. It turned out all right, but I didn't get fired. Yeah. So why we talking?
Why am I talking about pressure?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. So I just had the chance to talk to Anthony Maras.
Who's that?
He was the director of a major motion picture called Pressure, and it's not the type of pressure we were just talking about.
Barometric pressure? Is it barometric pressure?
It could be.
But
let me finish. Let me get to it. But it's about making the right decisions to pull off D-Day.
Oh, D-Day. You mean like
D-Day, the invasion, right?
The invasion.
Yeah, that's what I said.
World War II. Yeah.
Yeah, World War II. So did you know that it was almost not successful because of the weather forecast? You're a history guy.
I did know that. I studied that period of history.
Give us from your perspective.
I studied that period of history. Yeah, it was actually on and off and on and off.
Yeah.
The Weather Channel between the strait there between England and France, is known for its bad weather conditions,
That's right?
And the weather conditions for this operation had to be like perfect.
So, you want to hear what the director had to say?
I do. I'd like to hear this one.
So let's welcome him. Anthony Maras, welcome to Army Matters, brother. We're so happy to have you here. You're the first director we've had on this show.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I've never spoke to a 3-star general before, so it's a first for both of us.
Okay, great. And you're from Australia. What part, man?
I'm from Adelaide, Australia, which is the southern part. Beautiful little part of the world.
Wow, that's great. So we really want to try to find the background for our guests about their leadership journey and a little bit about your background. So tell us a little about where you're from. You kind of said that. What got you into filmmaking?
I've got a pretty, in some ways, cliched relationship with how I became a filmmaker, in the sense that I was that kid that was running around as a teenager, borrowing, begging and stealing to get camera and friends and this and that together to make movies, and just always loved it and always loved movies. As I got older, I worked on a few, production assistant and that. But I studied law in university because I didn't get into film school. And I had the opportunity as part of my law degree to go and study at University of California in Santa Barbara. And that's where I got to make some films. And when I got back to Australia, I had made a film called Azadi, which was it's actually set in a former weapons testing range, actually an active weapons testing range now, called Woomera. And that was my first film. And from there, I kept making other little short films until I got to the opportunity to make a film called Hotel Mumbai. That was set.
I've heard of that one.
You know that one? That was set in during the Taj attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't long after that, after having done that film, where I came across the script for Pressure. Rest is history, as they say.
So You say you're a lawyer?
Yeah. I went to law school. I got my accreditation. I practiced for a very short period of time in banking and insolvency law, bankruptcy and insolvency law.
Oh, wow.
Which is about as opposite as you can get to filmmaking.
Yeah, no kidding.
But in its own way, it helped a lot. Helped a lot to have done that degree.
Okay, so let's jump into the movie Pressure. By the way, very good movie, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You know, there have been a lot of movies made about D-Day. What is Pressure about, and why did you want to tell this specific story, especially now?
It was born out of fascination. Like, I read this screenplay, and it seemed it come from a stage play, and sort of it had played many times around all throughout England. They had played some scenes at the 75th anniversary of D-Day for the Queen of England and the heads of state of all allied nations. So it had quite a profile. It was more on reading, and I thought this is such a unique story in that many war films, many of my favorite war films, you know, concentrate on the heat of battle and on, you know, what it's like for the flesh and blood directly being spilt, and how it feels to be that young kid, you know, in the platoon or in the E-boat or in the you know, in the landing craft. There's been many films that have covered that. What interested me about Pressure is that it was the inverse of that. It kind of focused its narrative on this 3 days leading up to the, you know, largest seaborne invasion in history. But what really got me is that you ultimately had this small group of characters who had a decision to make. Do we go or don't we go? They don't understand all the aspects, but they've got to make a decision which is going to affect immediately the lives of hundreds of thousands of men, but then of millions of people across the world, because it large part can determine World War II.
So why do you think audiences would find this compelling? Frankly, the people that we had, there wasn't a dry eye on multiple conversations. But why do you think audiences will find this compelling?
So I think military audiences will find a lot in it because they will see similarities in terms of the problems and the issues and the challenges that they face. I think regular audiences would be interested in it because whilst it is set during wartime, it's about leadership and it's about decision making. And it's, in this case, it's about how you bring your best self to the table when you've got a life-changing decision ahead of you. This just happened to be one that involved the biggest invasion in history. But I think the sort of anxieties that these characters go through in terms of trying to choose this right path, everyone has gone through, whether it's a health-related thing, whether it's, do I move away from my family to do this job over here? Like these fundamental life issues. And the film tortures its characters because they're in a state of uncertainty. And I think people will relate to that.
Join AUSA, the Army's premier professional association and host of the largest land power exposition in the United States. AUSA is open to everyone, including all ranks and components. So whether you have a relationship with the U.S. Army or simply want to honor those who serve, you can learn more online at ausa.org/join.
Welcome back, everyone, to Army Matters. Now, let's dig into the dynamics, Anthony, between the American General Eisenhower and the Scottish group Captain James Stagg, who was the D-Day meteorologist. Why do you think General Eisenhower listened to Stagg instead of the Army Colonel Crick?
It wasn't automatic. He had to prove himself.
Okay.
And what I found so compelling about Stagg's character is in him, you've got a guy who goes and stares down the most formidable military minds of that era, arguably equal to any era given what they were facing at that time. And he looked them in the eye and didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. In fact, he told them what he knew that they most didn't want to hear, but what they needed to hear. And having a guy stand his ground and say to his superiors, there is a big bad monster coming over that hill. You can't see it. You can't even understand it, but you're going to have to decide on who to trust. And it was a very difficult decision for Eisenhower because the people that he had around him were all really competent. Irving Crick had been with him all through North Africa and had given phenomenal weather report. They were accurate, but they were a different beast to England and to the weather systems going over the Atlantic and to the chaotic, unpredictable nature of those weather systems. And I think there was a grudging respect that started to be built between Ike and Stagg when he came to understand that Stagg was doing exactly that, telling them what he thought he needed to hear, not what he wanted to hear. There are several things that occur in the screenplay which ultimately validate Stagg's point of view. But then they're left in a more difficult quandary because even though Stagg is right on a certain thing, it meant, well, now they're even in more trouble because there is a raging storm that is going to consume them all. And that dynamic between these titanic personalities clashing against one another and the wisdom of the leader to find the right people and to find who to trust is far more important in the complex world that we live in than knowing everything, because no one can know everything.
So are there any other aspects of the story that were your favorite to tell or really stood out for you in the filmmaking process?
I guess it would be this idea of nature itself, the natural world itself, and how even though it's kind of invisible, it is unquestionably the most potent and powerful thing that governs not only our personal lives, but our entire civilization.
Yeah.
And we don't see it because it's always around us, but whether you can mount this invasion, whether the crops are going to grow, whether you can put 10 million people in this city or not, is going to depend on the natural world and our understanding of it. And I like the idea of having a hero in Stagg who's got personal qualities that, amount to good leadership, but on a technical level, who has an awe and has a love and a respect for the natural world. At the inauguration of JFK, when he's passing the baton of leadership over to JFK, when JFK asked Eisenhower, what gave us the edge on D-Day? And Eisenhower very dryly just said, well, we had better meteorologists than the Germans. There's a timeless lesson there, for today and for all time. Like, we should lift people up that have expertise and have earned their expertise. And sometimes we should listen to them because, it's important.
In the beginning of the movie, and I think it was great, Exercise Tiger. That's not talked about a lot in history.
It was classified.
Yeah, when was it declassified?
50 years.
Oh, really?
It was in Slapton Sands, the coast of Devon in England. A fisherman had his line snag, and there was a Sherman tank under there. And then that little thread, along with other things, started uncovering this. The men who were involved in it, would be court-martialed if they spoke about it, because it would have been such a horrific thing for the morale of the troops going into D-Day, and then afterwards, D-Day's success, they didn't want to sully it. So it was forgotten. But it was very important to our script because first thing I did when I looked at the original screenplay was we need to start the film with this because it shows the consequences of failure. Everyone in that command room, everyone in the command, all those commanders in chief, all those officers, they knew what failure would look like. It would look like bloodshed. And if we didn't start with that sequence, I don't know that it hits the same way. But when you start with Exercise Tiger, you say even in a training exercise, more died in the training exercise than died on Utah Beach. And so that creates the monster. That shows if we get this wrong, training exercise, 750 or 49 thereabouts died. What's going to happen when we send hundreds of thousands of men over where there are actual Nazis waiting for us?
Churchill tells me you're the best meteorologist in the country.
Get me the latest readings from every single base within 2,000 miles of Normandy. The invasion's confirmed for Monday.
Oh, they won't like this.
We are faced with a succession of 2 aggressive storms.
Are you absolutely certain?
D-Day will be calm and sunny.
I couldn't disagree with that more.
So, Anthony, let's talk about Stagg, the unlikely hero. Tell us why him being a hero is such an important part of the film, even with everything he has going on in his professional and personal life.
What makes it interesting on a human level, which is all we have in stories, is that you've got a character that comes in there who is wiretap, who suffers no fools, and who, who looks like a gruff customer. What's interesting about Andrew's performance, and I think about the way the script is written, is he comes in almost like a storm, and he's cloudy and he's dark. Through that, the clouds part a little bit, and you see these little glimpses of his humanity. And you get an understanding that underneath this rough exterior, he cares deeply about what he's doing. He cares deeply about his wife. He cares deeply about his men. And most of all, he cares deeply about the truth and telling the leadership unvarnished truth, because he doesn't think he's there to be nice. He's not there to win friends. He's there to do a job. He might not be a nice person, but he's a good person. Yeah. And I think there's something compelling about watching a character like that. I'll tell you one last thing for your audience, which they might freak out at. We used archival footage in this movie, and we went back to the government registry here, the government archives in America, also to the Imperial War Museum in England. And I was intent on using real-life footage, some of which was shot by Hollywood cinematographers who were drafted into the war efforts. They knew how to shoot an image. We went back to the real-life footage, 35mm, we up-resed it, cleaned it, colorized it so that it doesn't look like history anymore. We needed many, many boots on the ground to help us go through this footage. There's over 50 hours of this stuff. And we didn't have enough people to process this footage. We asked the research editors that we had, can you bring any friends tomorrow? This is in London. They bring some friends the next day. They're like, there's too much footage. We can't go through it all. We're not going to meet our deadline. All right, any of you got any friends? Next day, in walks this big 6'5" tree trunk of a dude. Yeah, I'm here for a job. What's a job? Don't really know, but it's involving editing of archival footage. And they're like, oh, yes, that's all right. What's your name? He says, my name's James. Okay, what's your last name? He goes, Stagg. And they say, what a coincidence. That's the name of the main character in this movie. He looks up, he goes, is it a World War II movie? They go, yeah. He goes, about a meteorologist? He goes, yeah, that was my grandfather. 80 years later, he walked into our office.
Wow.
Completely unplanned, and went through our archival footage of what his grandfather had been responsible for.
That's amazing. And did he know about it before that time frame?
He knew about the story. Of course he did. Okay, sure. Of course he did. Yeah, it's his grandfather. But he didn't know the movie. And so a lot of that archival footage that you see was unearthed by the grandson of the protagonist in our film.
And so last thing, is there anything else you hope your audiences take away from this movie with respect to the military?
What the military has to undertake is a lot more than what it seems. There is battlefield heroics, which are heroic, but there's so much more to it. And I'd argue that success or failure depends as much, if not more, on some of the more boring factors, so to speak, than the battlefield stuff. You know, there's a lot of people behind the scenes who do really important work and, you know, responsible for the lives that we live now. And I hope this movie honors that.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, you know, we've run out of time and we could really keep talking about it. Thank you so much for putting this film together. The movie called Pressure on multiple levels. Atmospheric, personal, professional. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Daly, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Andy Bosnack is the associate producer and supervising sound editor. Major Ryan Crane is the writer, and Ellen Toner is the content editor. Umzinga Curry is the executive producer. Carrie Barrow-Heckes is the senior producer, and Savannah Campbell-Smith is the producer. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Wreath. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. AUSA's Army Matters podcast's primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. I'm Lashira Duncan, hoping you have a great Army day. Hooah!